Most people think they're looking for love. But if you look closely at your own life, you might realize you're not actually looking for love. You're auditioning for it. You're performing a version of yourself, refined and rehearsed, designed to win over the one person in the room least likely to ever give you a standing ovation. Today, we're opening up the cold machinery underneath that. Why you crave validation specifically from your harshest critic, and why actually winning that approval might be the most dangerous thing that could happen to you. Let's begin. In psychology, there's a concept called proximity seeking, the instinct to stay close to whoever's approval feels most tied to your survival. It's not irrational. It's ancient. But when the person you're seeking proximity to is a critic rather than someone safe, your nervous system doesn't just chase closeness. It rewrites your entire identity into a script. The script usually sounds something like this: I am enough if I lose the weight. I am enough if I get the promotion. I am enough if I finally say the exact right thing at the exact right moment. That isn't a relationship. That's a residency at a venue that was never going to book you. You aren't being loved for who you are. You're being managed for how well you can satisfy a critic whose target keeps moving. And that's the cruelest detail in the whole case file. The target moves. Every single time you meet the standard quietly relocates somewhere just past your reach. Not because you failed, because the standard was never really about the standard. It was about keeping you in the audition room indefinitely. So let's talk about why this particular kind of approval feels so much more addictive than approval that's freely given. There's a mechanism behind it called intermittent reinforcement. If someone loves you consistently, your brain treats that as a baseline, safe, reliable, and, chemically speaking, almost boring. But if someone criticizes you 90% of the time and hands you one small crumb of praise the other 10%, that crumb registers as a jackpot. Your brain releases a disproportionate dopamine spike, not because the praise itself was significant, but because you had no way of predicting it was coming. The unpredictability is the hook, not the affection. Now picture a second version of that same machine, one that never criticizes, never withholds, just steadily pays out warmth every single time. No spinning reels. No gamble. No surprise. And here's the disturbing part. Because your reward system was calibrated by the first, unpredictable machine, this second, reliable one can start to feel like nothing at all. Not because it's worth less. Because consistency simply doesn't spike the same chemical response that uncertainty does. I want to say this part plainly, because it rarely gets said out loud. Preferring the machine that withholds isn't a character flaw, and it isn't a taste in people. It's a nervous system responding exactly the way unpredictable reward schedules train any nervous system to respond. In laboratories, in casinos, and in living rooms. Now here's where this gets sharper and more personal. To actually stop auditioning, you have to confront a fairly brutal truth about your critic. They were never really watching your performance in the first place. They're watching their own reflection. Their criticism isn't a review of your worth. It's a map of their own unprocessed insecurities, projected outward and aimed at the nearest available target, which, in this case, happens to be you. They don't withhold approval because you aren't enough. They withhold it because withholding is the only mechanism they've ever had for feeling, even briefly, superior to someone. Which means the entire case you've been quietly building against yourself, the rehearsed version, refined again and again for their approval, was filed under the wrong name from the very start. You were never actually on trial for being inadequate. You were cast, without ever agreeing to it, inside someone else's unfinished story about themselves. So here's the recast. Stop rewriting your behavior to fit a review that was never really about you to begin with. The next time you notice the pull to perform harder for someone's approval, pause and ask a more precise question. Is this standard even fixed? Or is it going to move the moment I get close, exactly like every standard before it did? If this is bringing clarity to a pattern you've lived inside for a long time, subscribe to Morphic Depth. We take these cases apart, piece by piece, every week. You were never a performer. You were always the prize. It's time to stop asking for permission to exist from people who never had the authority to grant it in the first place. Because here at Morphic Depth, we know the truth. Love was always supposed to be free.